Welcome to the Instant Reaction live stream Seahawks draft blog. Rob Staton, Robbie Williams here to dissect what happened in Green Bay this afternoon, and it's more disappointment for the Seahawks. And they're now 3-6, and the season is, well, we'll get into that. I think first and foremost, Robbie, it needs to be said though, because I'm already seeing a little bit of it on Twitter, and I've seen a little bit in the comment section of the blog. You know, people are really hammering Russell Wilson right now and being very critical of his performance. Listen, there's a few things that we need to get straight here, because this is how it is. If Russell Wilson turns around to you and says, I am ready to start, you're starting him. There's no way that you go into another game with Geno Smith as your starting quarterback. You can't. Geno Smith is not very good. And I know people want to kind of make excuses for him and say, well, they beat the Jaguars. He's not a good player. At the start of the season, they kept Sean Mannion on the 53-man roster to act as competition. And then they moved him on and signed Jake Luton as competition for the backup spot. Right now, there are still 3 quarterbacks on the roster, including Jacob Eason. They have never had any faith in Geno Smith, who played appallingly in all of the preseasons that he played for the Seahawks. And they were never going to have him start this game if Russell Wilson said he was healthy. So that's the first thing there. Second thing, there was absolutely no way that Russell Wilson, having been cleared by his doctor, was going to turn around to the Seahawks and go, I need another week, guys. That was never going to happen. So you've got this perfect storm of, there was no way that Wilson was ever going to say he wasn't ready to play. And there was never any way that Pete Carroll wasn't going to start Russell Wilson once he'd been cleared by the doctors. So he was always going to start this game. So the key thing for this game was to create a plan and design something that would accommodate the fact that you were going to be using a quarterback today that was essentially playing with his middle finger wrapped in tape. And they couldn't get that done. The little easy screens that Aaron Rodgers was throwing, that we've seen a lot of teams throw against the Seahawks this season, that when Pete Carroll's asked about screenplays in the week, I think he said something along the lines of, we're not very good at them. And it was the understatement of the decade. But the Seahawks they don't have plays like that where they can just get the ball out and move the chains a little bit. They're not really capable of cooking up a collection of plays that will feed the ball to Tyler Lockett so that he's involved, or to DK Metcalf. They're trying to get the tight ends a little bit involved early in the game, but that soon died a death. They didn't have that creativity to manage the situation. Neither did they have the creative runs. The running game was kind of like took a back seat, didn't it, in the first half, as Wilson was throwing, I think, 3 times as many times as they ran in that first half. Whereas, like, you could just imagine Kyle Shanahan coming up with a creative selection of running plays just to be able to move the ball and just get into position where you can get some field goals and can get some points on the board. There was none of that. And as a consequence, the offense was dreadful because Wilson is not remotely close to being ready to start, but as we've already acknowledged, was always going to be starting in this game. And that's nobody's fault, not Wilson, not Carroll, that he did start. And this is what you end up with, Robbie. You end up with the first shutout since 2011 when Tavares Jackson and Charlie Whitehurst were exchanging starts. I think that was the week 2 game against the Steelers, wasn't it? Which was horrendous. But at least it felt like it was still the early days and the start of something. This feels like the complete opposite. This feels like the end of something.
Yeah, listen, Russell Wilson throwing 40 passes coming off an injury like he had on his finger is just unacceptable all around. Not having a game plan to get like little screen passes going or whatever. I don't care if you're not good at them, at least try it. Like, we got to try something, maybe some end arounds, D. Eskridge got 1 pass towards the end, maybe get him involved early, see what he's got. I don't care. Give it to Penny Hardaway on the end around. Just do something that's different and that's something that they're not expecting. Having Russell Wilson go out there, throw 40 times. This wasn't a good game plan. And you're right, that the running game took a backseat. There was no creative plans anywhere. It just felt weird. And on the flip side, I mean, our defense seemed to be playing pretty well. I mean, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, they seemed off all game as well. This is a game that we could have taken advantage of and come back. And if we would have won this game, I mean, give ourselves, people want to talk about playoffs. I mean, that's what you have to win this game if you want to even make a chance at the playoffs. And there's no chance now at this point. I mean, we're seeing the writing on the wall. I mean, we kind of knew it was going to happen anyways, but at this point, like, give yourself an opportunity. If you're going to throw Russ out there, and if Russ is saying he's ready, come up with a creative game plan. I'm getting tired of watching them play crappy football, doing the same thing over and over and over, and not seeing anything that's unique or special. I want to see them get creative and do something to keep their guys from getting in fights in the fourth quarter because they're pissed it's not working. Like, do something different. I'm over it. I'm tired of watching this football. It needs to be better.
Yeah, and there needs to be a change, and look, we'll no doubt talk a little bit about that in the upcoming sort of moments of this stream. I think, just to go back to the Wilson situation. I mean, look, I get where there's a lot of frustration on, because there's a whole bunch of Seahawks fans right now who are feeling very precious about life. I mean, I've had it now. I mean, I've just put a tweet out saying how horrible that game was, and referred to new lows in the tweet, and some guys tweeting at me going, "What do you mean new lows?" To which I said, "Well, it's the first shutout for 10 years since Tavares Jackson and Charlie Whitehurst were last starting." Well, that's not a new low then, is it? And you're thinking, well, you see, they're very precious at the moment. You've got a whole bunch of people who I would call sort of Carroll apologists, who don't like the way this is going. This is not what they had expected. They don't like people criticizing Pete Carroll. They don't like the thought that he's going to be blamed and essentially leave. And you get a whole bunch of people who don't like Russell Wilson. And then equally, they will then criticize Wilson, and you're already getting a bit of this, that he's got to go. There's a whole wave of smart 12s who think that Russell Wilson is to blame for everything, and they'll use big words to break down the tape and say why that's the case as well. And then you have the opposite side of it, which is you have people who really don't like Pete Carroll and will criticize him, and really like Russell Wilson will defend him to the hilt. Look, there's blame to go around everywhere. Like I was saying off before we started, Robbie, I cannot stand some of the social media that Russell Wilson does, and all this stuff about being better than ever, and all these comeback videos, and all this. It's not a film. You're not in the next Avengers film, Russell. It's NFL football. Okay? And when you play quarterback, it's quite hard to throw a football when you have enormous taping on your middle finger. His accuracy was off. Balls fluttered. He'd be throwing too high, too low. It didn't look like Russell Wilson at all. And it's not a great look when you say things like you're better than ever and you're doing this, that. You really needed to sort of take a step back this week and just sort of acknowledge the situation. And people are going to use that as a stick to beat you with now as a consequence of all that. It's too much. So that's one thing. And then we've talked about the fact that Wilson was always going to start and that they're always going to start him. But I think, could Wilson have played better? Yeah. Could they have schemed better to manage this game? Yes, absolutely. But it all comes together a pretty bad football team. And, we can spend the whole week talking about how jolly good the defense played. Listen, defense played well, Robbie, today. But Green Bay stuttered and stalled on offense as much as Seattle did for 3 quarters. So let's acknowledge that as well. Let's not give all of the credit to the Seattle's defense and then all of the misery for Seattle's bad play on offense to the offense and not to Green Bay's defense. Because if it has to work both ways. And by the end, I did see did I see or did I not see Robbie Carlos Dunlap throw a shoe?
You did see it. You saw it.
Who throws a shoe, has to be said.
Yeah.
He threw a shoe and got a 15-yard penalty, at a huge critical point in the game. And did I or did I not see Bobby Wagner essentially Gangnam style riding AJ Dillon into the end zone?
It's a $20 million linebacker right there.
Right into the end zone there for a touchdown. Yes, that happened as well. $20 million linebacker on a critical third down. If he gets a stop there, did he kick the field goal and say, we don't think you're going to score a touchdown? Maybe. At least it's still a game at that point. As soon as he got to 10, frankly, 3 felt like it was enough for Green Bay on the day. But once they got to 10, that was definitely it. And here we are. And, again, we could sit here and we could say, oh, Jamal Adams was better today. It was. Jamal Adams played better, certainly better than he has at any point this season. He got an interception. Doff my cap to him. Well done. There were a couple of other players on defense who played well. I thought that Trey Brown did quite well. You know, and there's probably a couple of other people that you could reference did well as well. But it all just feels like a pointless conversation, Robbie, because we all know which way this is going. They're 3-6. Wilson's in no fit state to lead a charge and have one last hurrah. So we're just going to drift it. I just want the season. I want the season to end. This is boring. It is torturous to watch. It is really difficult to endure. There's no excitement during the week. Like I used to think, Monday, we're going to get to from Carroll twice. We're going to get him on the Brock and Salk show, and then we're going to get his press conference, and we'll get all the updates we need from that. Wednesday comes around. Carroll speaking again. Thursday, it's the quarterback. We'll hear from Russell, or we'll hear from Sherman. Friday, we hear from Carroll again. Sunday, game day, exciting. Who are they playing? Can't wait. Is it 9 o'clock yet? Our time, because that's when the games kick off. Now it's like, oh, I don't think I can bear to listen to Mike Salk interview Pete Carroll one more time this year. I just can't. Monday, I'd much rather read Char's notes that he leaves in the comment section than listen to Carroll.
That's what I've started doing.
Wednesday, ditto. I'll not be watching any of the player press conferences. And Friday, I didn't watch the one on Friday either. I didn't even read the notes. Didn't care. And then Sunday comes along and it's like, oh, they're going to ruin another weekend. And like, you're just going to sit down, and next week we'll sit down and we'll watch them play Arizona. And you know what? Even if they win, it'll just be like, is it January yet? It's just crap, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, listen, and here's the thing: when Tony Romo was going through the list of teams, he was like, "Oh, the NFC is wide open. He's got all these teams." And he's talking about the top 6 teams. I was like, "There's now one team that he's listing that I feel like we could beat. Those teams are all way better than us." Anyway, it's just frustrating. You're right. I mean, I feel like I'd just rather the season end and know what first round pick we're giving the Jets. You know, I definitely want us to win some more games, so it's easier pill to swallow. But man, at the end of the day, it's been horrific football to watch. I mean, the first game of the season was exciting. The Colts, and that was the best game we've played since. And then I guess the first half of the Titans game as well. And then then we just kind of crap the bed, and then after that it was all over, and we just haven't looked the same since. So the reason why I'm excited for the offseason is I want to know what's going to happen. I want to know what direction this team's going. And your article this week, it's Russ or Pete. It's one of the two, right? And this is what's going to happen. This is what we're going to find out. So we have to endure another 3 months of trying to figure out who it's going to be, and then come the off season, we'll finally figure it out. Like, is it going to be Russ or is it going to be Pete? What's going to happen? And I really hope that it's Pete just decides to hang it up. I think a lot of fans are kind of getting on that boat, and we just need to see some changes. This is there's not a lot to be excited about. And you mentioned Trey Brown. He's like one of the few pieces that I'm like, man, I'm excited about to see his career and see how he kind of projects, because he seems to be playing really well. But after that, I mean, there's not a lot that's super exciting.
Yeah, we've got a super chat. I've got a point to make on some of what you've just discussed there. We're quickly to the super chat. Corey, thank you for that. Feels like after the Colts, the offense apparently went too smoothly. The offensive game plan needs to be stay on schedule, thus to help the defense. Corey, appreciate the super chat. And anybody else who wants to send them in, it is 1 o'clock in the morning here in the UK. So all super chats are welcome. They raise my spirits after watching the Seahawks play. Somebody sent me a tweet the other day saying that I'm desperate for the Seahawks to fail to validate my opinions on the team. And he said that with a straight face after I stayed up till 5 o'clock in the morning to watch 3 games of Geno Smith. The point I was going to make, Robbie, in relation to what you're saying, in that article, various people kind of like sent me tweets or commented on it and stuff like that. And, a couple of the messages that have been sent, I've just been like, come on. I think there are people out there on Seahawks Twitter and perhaps even in the media who don't understand the impact of what happened this week with Odell Beckham Jr., who are underestimating what happened there. And listen, I'm not for a second saying that I have amazing sources and that know everything that's going on, because I don't. And I'm happy to accept that this is all speculative on my behalf. I am not reporting something. I am not saying anything is a fact. I am saying that I have the opportunity to speak to different people, and I can tell you that Odell Beckham thing is bigger than people were thinking. The fact that he did want to play with Russell Wilson, and the fact that he in the end had what it appears no interest because there was other teams with offensive-minded head coaches who could detail how he was going to be involved is indicative of the problem and compounds the problem. And I think we're getting to a stage now, Robbie, where Russell Wilson sort of sees people who he's very close to like this, and Antonio Brown was the one last year, going elsewhere. And people will just say, oh, well, that's indicative of Russell, isn't it? It really isn't. It really isn't. And I think when he with the state of the team and the fact that he's been hurt and he's come back and that we have nights like this, to me, it's just trending towards, I hate to say this, but I'm getting to the point now, and this is not something that I've heard. That was just the Odell Beckham stuff. But I'm getting to a point now where I think there's a realistic chance that Russell is just going to want out whatever happens. That we're getting to the point where the franchise is now going to have to offer a hard sell to Wilson. Like it's going to have to be like Carroll retires, or that Carroll admits he's going to retire before the season ends. They start the search quickly. They heavily involve Wilson in the search. But that becomes very difficult because you can't have the quarterback essentially picking the next head coach. But at the same time, he's going to have to sort of give it the rubber stamp in order for everything to sort of move smoothly. And I'm not sure that he and John Schneider can work together anymore. I think that maybe that Mark Rodgers, John Schneider relationship is so poor that I'm not even sure that can work. So it probably will mean Schneider going as well. The franchise will have to go all in on Wilson, and will have to make it clear that it's going all in on Wilson. And even if Carroll retires, Robbie, how can any of us have any confidence that this is what the franchise is going to do, or have any confidence in whatever the franchise is going to do? Because we just don't know, do we? We don't know what Jody Allen and Chuck Arnold and the ownership group are like when it comes to needing to make decisions like this. It's just a complete unknown. Maybe they do sort of just move on from everybody, clean house, and say we need to rally behind our franchise quarterback. Maybe they'll just stick with Carroll and Schneider and say, do what you want to do, fellas. We've given you 5-year contracts. Maybe they'll get rid of Carroll and Schneider and it won't be enough. You know, and Wilson will still ask for a trade because he wants to go somewhere where he thinks the formative years of his career will be spent succeeding. And I think he looks at somewhere like New Orleans and thinks he's the missing piece for Sean Payton's next run in New Orleans. And I think that's probably where he's going to want to push to go. So it's really concerning from a Seahawks fan's point of view, because we're just kind of like, you know, the anxiety levels are going to rise because what is going to happen? We don't know who's going to be coaching the team, who's going to be the GM, who's going to be the quarterback next year, let alone for the next 5-10 years. That's never a place where you want to be. We don't have a first-round pick. So even if you say, okay, well, you know, blow everything up and get rid of everybody, including Russell, you're still a pick down because you've spent one on Jamal Adams anyway. Like, usually you would have like let's say that the Seahawks had their pick, and let's say it ended up being like 5 overall, as bad as that. You would then have 5 overall before you've even traded Wilson, and you're adding 3 picks to that. Like, you were already a pick down. So the situation's like overly worse as we kind of look to what this season is. And that huge unknown is, it feels crippling as a fan. It feels really, really difficult to accept right now. And that's kind of why I'm sat here and agreeing with what you're saying. Get on with January. Bring it on. We need to know what's going to happen so that just as fans, even if it's the worst case scenario, at least we can go, okay, this is it now. What happens next? Let's have a conversation about it. Because right now we're just kind of shooting in the dark as to what is going to be the future of this franchise.
Yeah, 100%. You're just guessing at this point what's going to happen, and at any point after this season's over, you know, you could be right. They both could be gone, and it could be a complete rebuild. I mean, you know, Schneider, Pete, and Russ could all be gone. And if Russ decides he wants to leave, he's going to leave. This is the year it's going to happen. This could be one of the reasons why they're saving that money. I mean, we have all this money to spend. You know, we didn't put a claim in on Odell. You know, they're saving that money. There's, you know, I know you've talked about, well, they could be just pushing that cap a little bit from Dwayne Brown and Quandre Diggs. But I mean, you never know. They could be trying to save up that money for that Russ trade and the cap hit there. I don't know. There's a lot of scenarios in this. It's just very confusing as a fan to know where we're going and what the direction of the team is. And right now, the direction is just going down. Right? This is not fun football to watch. No matter what, something has to change. It's just kind of waiting for that unknown to see what actually is going to happen.
On a couple of super chats, Chaz has got in touch. Is there any chance Wilson wants to stay? Isn't he too old to want to go through a rebuild? My sense is he wants to find a better roster and staff. Chaz, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's where Russell Wilson is right now. If you had to push me for a prediction, Robbie, I think that Russell Wilson is at a point where he's ready to move on. I think he's ready. I think this season has confirmed everything that he needed to know. I am not convinced that if the Seahawks move on from Carroll first day after, as soon as the final game is done, they move on. I think they're playing Arizona last, aren't they? Move on from Carroll, even move on from Schneider. I don't think it's going to change a great deal. I think that Russell Wilson, if he isn't already, or if Mark Rodgers isn't already, very shortly is going to be planning how he wants to go about this, because there are ways and means to go about it. And at the end of the day, the Seahawks are going to have to grant him the request to leave. I think once a franchise quarterback essentially says he wants to go, it's very difficult to hold on to him, although that is what Green Bay has done with Aaron Rodgers. But then ultimately to get him on the field, they had to essentially redo his deal so that he is almost certainly gone next season. So I think I think they'll be sort of thinking very shortly how they want to go about this, because Wilson will not want to burn bridges in Seattle. He will want it to be the best possible parting around so that he leaves the city without everybody hating him. And these are very difficult things to manage. If Adam was here, Robbie, he would be the perfect person to explain this, because he is a Tottenham Hotspur fan in the Premier League. Their star player is Harry Kane, the England captain. He, this summer, wanted to leave and go to Manchester City. He tried to do it in a classy way. He didn't get the move that he wanted. It's all spiraled out of control. He is, I wouldn't say hated by fans now, but he's disliked by a large portion of the fan base. His form completely disappeared and he's stuck. And that could be a cautionary warning to Russell Wilson as to what happens if you don't do this right. So he's going to be very aware of that, I think. Maybe not the Kane example, but about doing this the right way. And he's also going to want to go to the right place. And I think the right place for him is going to be the New Orleans Saints. If they keep losing, it'll be easier for the Seahawks to trade him because they won't be in the late 20s. But equally, then not going to be picking in the top 10 either. So it's quite hard to sort of justify a trade like that. So I don't really know what that, again, it's kind of like pick the team that he goes to sort of thing, where you get the picks. And, and I'm sure that somebody will be listening to this, Robbie, going, well, who wants Russell Wilson? He's not playing. He's not played well at the end of last season. He's not played well this year. He's been injured. He played awful today. All I will say to that is be really, really, really careful with that kind of talk. Because what we're talking about here is a player that since 2012 has been on a true Hall of Fame career. That has been a sensational player that we take for granted because we've just become so used to following him. There are so many bloody Seahawks fans, some of the most vocal ones on Seahawks Twitter as well, by the way, who have only started following this team since either Pete Carroll took over or Russell Wilson was drafted. There are a whole bunch of fans who weren't there to see what happened before that. You and I were here before 2012, Robbie. You longer than me. But we've seen plenty of bad quarterbacks in Seattle. And you just have to watch the NFL right now. Let me ask you this, Robbie. Who would you rather see start next year for Seattle? Is it Mitch Trubisky or Jared Goff? Because that's the kind of thing you're going to be looking at.
That's the trajectory right now for sure. And here's the other thing about trading Russell this year. Even if you get a high draft pick, and I just saw someone say something about being jealous of the Pats and having a young good quarterback, on the first year of the contract. There are no good there's no first round talent quarterbacks in this year's draft, in my opinion. There's nothing that's going to come in and be like, oh, this guy's going to, he's going to light it up and he's going to be a stud in the first year. I can't see it. There's not a lot of players that excite me at the quarterback position coming out of this draft. It's going to be tough sledding to get a quarterback that's going to do what Russ can do for this team. I'd love to see Russell on an offensive minded head coach, someone that can come in, game plan a little bit better, get in position to succeed. It's, a lot of times they've talked about it over and over. Pete likes to play his ball up until the fourth quarter. Then it's like, hey, Russ, go win the game for us, kind of thing. And I'm getting tired of that. There's got to be some changes. But be careful what you wish for, because I mean, you let Russ go, we might hit a home run on somebody, we might get somebody. It's possible, but I mean, it's like winning the lotto. It's really hard.
So I was just having a look at this because I wanted to come back to that point, because people, like somebody's post. There's another super chat actually. We'll get to that in a very, very shortly. But Ninja Dragon says Wilson's not good enough anymore to go all in with. I guess that's a point of view. But here's something to remember here. It's not that long ago that people were saying Aaron Rodgers he's past his best. He only had 25 touchdowns in 2018 and 26 in 2019. Okay, and people were kind of writing him off a little bit, and then he comes back and wins the MVP in 2020 because quality players they don't stay struggling for long. And I get the sense that that'll be the case with Russell Wilson. I think we can all sit here and go, okay, Russell's had a rough end of last season and it's been tough sledding this year and he's got hurt. I guarantee if you put him on the Saints next year with Sean Payton, that he'll be racking up 40 touchdowns again and being in the MVP race, and the Saints will be getting to the playoffs and probably winning their division. That will happen. And we can sit here in April and May and people would think, well, Rob, wouldn't you like this? I mean, like the Seahawks don't have a first round pick. You write a draft blog. Wouldn't you love to have 3 fresh first round picks to talk about? No, because during this bye week, Robbie, I thought, do you know what? Especially because of this Beckham nonsense going on, and because I genuinely think for this week that it's heading one way. Regardless of what, I still think Cowell's going to retire, but I think that I think Cowell's going to retire and Russell Wilson's going to be off. And I sat down during the bye week and I watched the quarterbacks. I'd watched a lot of the quarterbacks already who were eligible for the next draft, but I sat down and I watched them carefully so that I feel like I'm in a good position to comment on all of the big names that are going to be eligible for next year. This class is worse than I thought it was, and I thought it was bad to begin with. If you are looking for an answer at quarterback in college football right now, good luck, because it's not even just that there's not one next year. There isn't one that stands out for the next draft either. So let's say that you got like 1 first round pick and maybe 2 in the following year. I don't know which team would do that with you, but let's just say that that's a thing. I couldn't even give you a name of a quarterback you could pine for if to be awful next year and to get the first overall pick for a year's time. It is an absolute dearth of quarterback talent in college football right now. There is no answer out there. So let's say people go, what about Kenny Pickett? He's having a good year at Pittsburgh. Watch the tape. Kenny Pickett plays pretty well. He's doing well for Pittsburgh. He's elevating that team. But so did Paxton Lynch for Memphis back in the day. I'm not comparing those two players. I'm just saying Paxton Lynch had a good season at Memphis, was in the Heisman race for a large period of time, lost a couple of games, wasn't so much after that. How's he done? Pickett is in the pocket. He lacks patience. He doesn't read the field as well as you would hope. He is hesitant at the pocket too often. He can throw downfield, but there's no real wow factor when you watch him play. You don't think I am watching a future star when you watch him play. And a lot of there's basically like a 24% hit rate on, first and second round quarterbacks over the last 10 years, Robbie. The ones who generally have succeeded are the ones that when you watch them in college football, you go, wow, that is a talent. That is a difference-making arm strength, difference-making size and power, difference-making speed and athleticism with Lamar Jackson or somebody like that. The players jump out to you who have gone on and had pretty good to great NFL careers since the 2012 draft. You don't see it with Kenny Pickett, I'm afraid. And he's the best of the bunch. Malik Willis, day 3 pick for me. Carson Strong, mid-rounder. The guy at North Carolina, my word. I mean, it's like watching him play is like watching Carson Palmer trying to run QE draws over and over and over again. Matt Corral, I'm sorry, but he's playing in the most wide open spread offense in college football with Lane Kiffin. A lot of the plays that he's throwing in that offense, they ain't going to be there at the next level. So good luck, because all that's going to happen is you're going to get a next season and you're going to have and for me, the way that I would look at this, Robbie, you're going to end up in two situations. Either scrambling around seeing if Atlanta will trade you Matt Ryan, trying and failing to get into the mix with Aaron Rodgers and Deshaun Watson. And then you're going to be left going, okay, who's available? Who can start for us? And we'll push this on to next year and we'll hope for the best. And then you're going to be looking at the Goffs and you're going to be looking at the Trubiskys and you're going to be looking at whoever else, Fitzpatrick, Heineke, Sam Darnold, if he gets cut. You're going to be looking at players like that to be makeshift for a year. And then Russell Wilson's going to be throwing touchdowns in New Orleans. And we're all going to be sat here in a year's time going, what on earth have we done? That is what will happen. I'm telling you.
Yeah, no, I agree. Looks like we missed a super chat, Rob, from David.
Yeah, I mentioned that, but we're going to come back to it. David says, can either of you explain the logic of not taking a timeout with 4 minutes left, but then fielding Wilson, Lockett, Metcalf, and co. when 3 scores down? Yeah, I mean, look, I can't say that it bothers. I know that they were sort of talking about it, weren't they, Tony Romo and Jim Nantz, but I can't say it really bothered me that they kept them all out on the field at the end there. Yeah, there's always a chance of an injury, but there's a chance of an injury every time we take the practice field, isn't there, Robbie? And if they'd have just got a touchdown drive or something there, then it would have given some kind of warm, fuzzy feeling at the end, I guess, maybe. I don't know. I didn't really care either way. I wasn't, to be honest, when not taking the time out, I was resigned. I was both resigned to the game going, but didn't care with the fact that they kept everybody out on the field, I have to say. I'm not sure what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little frustrated. I was like, man, use your timeouts. Like, we're still in this game. I would rather had held them to, a field goal instead of a touchdown. And yeah, I don't know. I don't typically enjoy Tony Romo just because he's a Cowboys fan or he's a Cowboy. I just don't like Cowboys. It's just one of those things. But I actually kind of laughed at what he said. He's like, yeah, maybe they just don't want to play anymore. Like, Pete's ready to get out of here. Russell's hurt, clearly not playing well. Let's just let him have it and get out of here. And shoot, maybe that was the case. But then you see at the end of the game, they're still going for it. So who knows?
Yeah. I wasn't too. If you've got a super chat and you want to go to it, then go straight there. Kerry's. So what you're saying, Rob, is Jacob Eason is the QB of the future. Well, yeah. And Sean says Mariota. Well, they could do a lot worse, Sean. I'll tell you that now. They could do a lot worse. But this is part why I kind of wanted them to take a quarterback last year, Robbie. And Kellen Moore or Kellen Moore. Am I getting mixed up? I'm getting mixed up with the Dallas coordinator.
Kellen Mond.
Davis Mills. At least then you've kind of got one in the chamber, so to speak, learning the offense. Like next year, rather than going for the Trubisky or the whoever, you give that guy a try. And yeah, do you know what? I suppose you could equally argue it would have just pissed Wilson off if you'd have done that back in May. But then his agent gave a list of 4 teams to Adam Schefter saying they wanted to be traded to. You just print that off, slap it down on the table, and go get on with your work, Russell. Yeah. Let us worry about what the future holds. If you're going to threaten that you want to leave, then we'll go and prepare for the future like we have to. So anyway. I don't know. I'm really sort of concerned about what the future holds. But in sort of the short term, Robbie, I'm desperate for the season to finish. I just can't. Nothing. Even if they win next week, I'm sure there'll be fans out there who will find the sort of the positivity to say, "Oh, we've beaten Arizona. The run's on. We can still get number 7 seed." But it's not going to happen, is it? And even if they somehow squeeze into that 7th seed, what are they going to do when they get there? They're going to lose. That's what's going to happen. It'll just be delaying the inevitable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, if they made it to 7th seed, I'd call that a win on the season, just if they made it to the 7th seed, just by how it's going right now. But there's no way. I mean, you're right. Even if we win in Arizona next week, people are going to start clamoring that we still have a shot. And you know, mathematically, sure, we might, but I mean, you can look at this team and just know we're just not good enough. We're just not, and that's the way it is. And I know people don't like to hear it, and majority of fans want to, you know, see the bright side of things, and I get it. I mean, I want to be that guy too, and I typically am, but right now it's hard for me, and I'm just ready for the season. And I think this is going to be a conversation that I think you and I are going to come on every post game and just talk about, well, where are we going next? You know, what this is going to be the hot topic of conversation until we actually figure out what's happening.
I've seen this message come in here. If you have the number one defense and a top 5 run game, there's lots of Super Bowls won by mediocre QBs if you can't snare that great one in the draft. Listen, this kind of BS, you know, it has to stop. Please stop being this dumb. Okay, I'm sorry to be that blunt, but I can't. There's nothing else I can say to this. Right, first of all, let's just get rid of the idea that there's been lots of Super Bowls won by mediocre quarterbacks. Yes, so many have been won by mediocre quarterbacks. Yes, all those 7 that Brady won, what a mediocre quarterback, and the Patrick Mahomes mediocre quarterback, and Russell Wilson mediocre quarterback, and Ben Roethlisberger mediocre quarterback, Aaron Rodgers mediocre, Peyton Manning, and a mediocre quarterbacks. No, there have not been lots of Super Bowls won by mediocre QBs. Let's just look at some of the more recent mediocre QBs winning Super Bowls have been. Joe Flacco was the Super Bowl MVP when Baltimore won their Super Bowl. And in the playoffs, he was electric. And he was on fire during that playoff run. And that's what, you do. Even when the mediocre quarterback gets into the postseason, they still have to be amazing. Eli Manning was lights out on the 2 Super Bowls that he won. Nick Foles was unbelievable in Philadelphia's playoff run. So, yeah, Nick Foles might be a crappy quarterback, but for that one playoff stretch, he was amazing. So that's just that one point to that. So the idea that let's now run through the mediocre quarterbacks who didn't get to the Super Bowl. Oh, God, that'll take forever to get through all of the quarterbacks that played that year who were just really bad. But let's get the Flacco example and the Foles and go, yes, that is possible. That isn't just the very extreme exception to the rule. That's actually very likely for the Seahawks. That's number one. Number two, if you just get the number one defense, I mean, like, oh yeah, because that's just really easy, isn't it? We can just cook up a number one defense. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll just cobble together a league-leading defense, and then we'll just throw any old quarterback out there, and it won't matter. That'll be easy. That's easily done, isn't it? And then, you know what? We'll just get a top 5 run game. We'll just get it, just get that number one defense sorted. What's that? We'll just buy one of those, and then we'll go to the thrift store and get a top 5 run game. And then once we've got that, we can just fit in, Case Keenum, and we'll definitely win the Super Bowl. Come on. Let's just be real here. What are we talking about? And it doesn't work like that. What you need is a really good, the team that wins the Super Bowl is the healthiest team, first and foremost. Then you need really good quarterback play, really good defensive play. Usually you have to have a complementary running game. You need all of those things. And even if you have a mediocre quarterback, they have to be really good in the playoffs. So let's just be realistic here about what this is. And I wrote an article about this recently, Robbie, sort of breaking down why you need good quarterback play. That the thing that ultimately gets you to the Final Four is that you do need to, more often than not, you need a really good quarterback. It's not just you can throw a team together and put any old Joe out there. That's not the case. It really isn't the case, is it? And I'm a bit tired of hearing that. And the Seahawks, if they get rid of Russell Wilson, they will be embracing a permanent situation like we've seen in the last 3 games. They might be able to get someone better than Geno Smith. They might get somebody worse. And then you will have, let's say, 3 first-round picks that you have to spend, Robbie. You have to actually then use those picks. Those picks have to turn into good players for those picks to be worth anything. If they end up being LJ Collier, Marquise Blair, and Jordan Brooks or Rashad Penny, then it's a nightmare of a trade. It's an absolute disaster. Like, at least if you trade Russell Wilson and get like 3 all-pro players, you're getting 3 all-pro players. Like if you just trade and they're not the very high, like if in this draft, for example, if you could say to me, Robbie, would you trade Russell Wilson for Kayvon Thibodeau, Derek Stingley, and let's say the best left tackle in the draft. I'd probably say I'm not totally against that.
Sure. I'm listening at that point.
Yeah, it's not we'll throw it out completely and not have the conversation. I'd like to be thinking, you know what? Kevin Thibodeau across from Darryl Taylor, Derek Stingley fills a huge hole at cornerback. You get a left tackle of the future potentially. You know, worst case scenario is there being an Eric Fisher maybe, something like that. Yeah, do you know what? I'll have a think about that. You know, that's you still got to find a quarterback from somewhere, but maybe Kenny Pickett in the second round is a bit more palatable than having to force it in the first round. Maybe you do strike gold on somebody a little later on. Maybe you do get that veteran quarterback. I don't know who can. You've got a better chance of getting that top defense if you've got Kayvon Thibodeau and Derek Stingley ahead of all the pieces you already got. See, I'm kind of like, that's fine. But here's the thing. To get Kayvon Thibodeau, you'll probably need the number 1 overall pick. To get Derek Stingley, you may need the number 2, but you probably need number 3, 4, or 5. To get the best left tackle, you're going to need a top 10 pick. Are you going to get 3 top 10 picks, including the number 1 overall pick for Russell Wilson? I'd suggest you're probably not.
No, you're not. And I mean, you know, there's pieces that, you know, you look at the team and you're like, man, there are pieces that I really like. Like I was talking about Trey Brown. Like I'm excited about seeing what his future looks like. He seems to be playing well, and hopefully he can continue to grow and become better. But it's replacing that quarterback position and the left tackle position. I mean, those are 2 positions that seem to be just incredibly hard to fill. And you're looking at, you know, I just think if you get rid of Russ, you're looking at a rebuild that's going to take, you know, you're not looking at getting a Super Bowl anytime soon. It's going to be a 3-4 year probably thing, and you're probably going to have to lose a lot of games to get that and try a lot of different things. I don't know. We saw Pete turn it around pretty fast. Maybe a coach can come in and kind of do the same thing. I mean, they did 192 transactions their first year or something insane. So I mean, it definitely is possible. I just want to see some fresh blood, something new, but I also would love to see Wilson get an opportunity. And I understand where people come from. Like, look, Russ hasn't looked great. He makes poor decisions. Sometimes you can see it on the field. Like he's not looking a certain way. DK's wide open. He's not throwing it. Like there's things about it that can be frustrating. I'd still like to give him one more chance to see what it's like, but man, I it's better than having Mitch Trubisky out there. You know, like that just doesn't excite me at all. That's nothing about that makes me think championship. And that's where I really want to get to. Whatever the path is, take the right path to get yourself into a chance to win yourself another Super Bowl. That's all I really want.
Yeah, and David's made a really good point here in the comment section. He says, surely as a franchise, you can't have Russell Wilson for a decade and then trade him without giving him a spin with an offensive coach. We'll kick ourselves. And that's exactly right. You've got to be willing to give this a chance with an offensive-minded head coach that Russell Wilson is in tune with. And we will be kicking ourselves if we just say, oh, well, Wilson didn't like the Carroll philosophy anymore, so therefore we got rid of the quarterback and then stuck with the philosophy. I mean, like, no, how could you stick with Carroll at this point? I mean, it's actually I'm starting to feel bad, like, for Carroll, because, you know, his way of doing things, Robbie, it ain't happening anymore.
And no, it feels like it's passed him by, right? That's what it feels like. It feels like
I mean, you could say, well, the defense played well today. What are you talking about? But no, I like that. This offensive, like the best. It's hard to sort of put it into words sometimes. But the Saints game was the perfect example for me. It's like, okay, we've not got Russell Wilson. We're going to play it really close, so we'll just basically run it into a brick wall time and time again with Alex Collins. We'll have 3 runs and punt it and play for field position. Hope the defense can get a turnover and that. No, like when you're watching like teams win games with Colt McCoy and win games with Trevor Siemian and, you know, be creative. Like look how strong the Titans have become since they lost Derrick Henry. It's almost as if they've gone, okay, we're just going to pivot to something else now. Okay, we had Derrick Henry, we could play this way, but now we haven't got him, so we're going to pivot, we're going to play this way. And I think they've won their 2 games since Derrick Henry was out. And you're thinking, well, this is the point. It's like, yeah, Wilson's not there, but that doesn't mean you just basically give up on the offense and just like run into a brick wall and hope for the best. Like, get the creative runs, come up with some against Jacksonville. They ran a trick play, and you think, well, where's that against the Saints? Like, you know, throw your punches in the games where you need to throw your punches, not in the games when you're already leading 24-0 or whatever it was when they threw that trick play against the Jaguars. And like when you look at Carroll on the sideline, and you just think, I'm sorry, I'm just ready to see somebody else there. I'm ready for when they pan to the sideline to see a different coach. And I totally understand that whoever this next coach is going to be, Robbie, it's going to be really difficult to pick one out, because you could mention any name right now to me, and me and you could have a conversation, pros and cons. So I could say, early in the season, I'd say someone like Joe Brady. Joe Brady's had a bit of a rough stretch because Sam Darnold struggled, and maybe that's more a review of Sam Darnold than it is a review of Joe Brady. Maybe if you give Joe Brady a top quarterback, maybe he won't have that kind of mid-season slump. But can we honestly say right now that you would feel 100% convinced that Joe Brady is what the Seahawks need? Then you could go and look at Brian Daboll. They just lost to the Jaguars, where they scored, I think, was it 3 points in that game? And whenever they play the Chiefs, they seem to go into their shell. I should correct that, because the last time they played the Chiefs, they were very creative and had a lot of success. But like the previous 2 times they played the Chiefs, they went into their shell. And he's a Belichick disciple. And when Belichick disciples tend to be head coaches, Robbie, they tend to fall flat on the face because they try and be Bill Belichick, and they're not. Lincoln Riley, go and see what the Oklahoma fans were saying about Lincoln Riley after this weekend when they lost their game this weekend. They're not happy. You can pretty much run through any coach, and there isn't one standout qualified candidate. And I totally understand that. That doesn't mean you should stay with Carroll just because, or that you should fear making the change. Quite the opposite. You should make the change. But it's just, there isn't, I'm just acknowledging that there is some danger in making the right call next, because there isn't somebody you go, that's definitely you've got to go. And you know what? And a lot of people will hate this. The more I think about it, Robbie, the more I'd probably be just inclined to go, just go with a Doug Peterson type coach. He's been out for a year. A lot of people in Philadelphia hated him at the end and wanted him out. But this is a guy who has won a Super Bowl, and people are very quick to give the credit to the Indianapolis Colts head coach now as the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia and say it was all down to him. Doug Peterson's won as many Super Bowls as Pete Carroll. So, and he was the head coach. And
he got dismissed after one bad season.
Yeah, I'm thinking, do you know what? Maybe he's learned from that. You bring him back. He's experienced. He knows what it's like to be a head coach. He has won a Super Bowl. I like the example of, Matt LaFleur taking over a Green Bay team that won back-to-back 6-game seasons and making them 13-3 back-to-back seasons as soon as he came in. If there's a Matt LaFleur type out there, great. If not, then somebody like Peterson, I think, is a safe option for somebody like the Seahawks with the next move that they make. He knows the region. Not that really makes any difference, but he's a local guy. I don't know. I think I'd at least be a little bit somewhat kind of think, yeah, okay, I can live with that. That feels like it'd be a win at this point, Robbie.
Yeah, I mean, you can throw out, and a lot of this is just speculation anyways. Who knows? Pete may not be done. I mean, I know he seems like he's done, but I mean, he ain't going to get fired. I think we all know he's not going to get fired, right? Though, I mean, we can agree on that. Like, who's going to fire him? No one's going to fire him. And if Pete literally says, like, okay, I'm going to walk away from the game, then okay, but I'm still not 100% convinced. I mean, I know his body language tells me a little bit different, but I'm still not 100% convinced that he is going to walk.
Well, you could never be 100%, could you? I mean, short of him like popping into the stream now and going, no, actually,
hang on, that'd be great. Hey, Pete, I got a couple questions for you, by the way.
Haven't we all? I've got more than a couple. But, you can never be 100%. I genuinely think that this just doesn't look like Pete. This doesn't. It's not as if he's just sort of going through the rigors of a tough year. I think this is. I think the Wilson situation of the year, Robbie, hammered him. I think that he looks like a coach that. I mean, when he says things like, "I wouldn't have been here as long without Russell," I think that was a man who's been thinking about things a lot, and maybe he's going home from work and thinking about the last few years and thinking about the future and thinking about the past. That's the kind of thing that I didn't expect Carroll to just suddenly blurt out after a loss. And I think he knows what's coming. I will say this. I'll say this, and I think this is 100% true, Robbie. I don't think there's any doubt about this whatsoever. Pete Carroll, in my opinion, wants no business of being the guy that runs Russell Wilson out of town. The last thing that Pete Carroll wants is to stick around to age 71, trade Russell Wilson, and then age 71 with, a maximum maybe of 3 years left of his NFL career. That's how many years we left in his contract. Start afresh with a new quarterback. That to me just does not seem likely at all. On the off chance that they can have a miraculous turnaround next year, go further, and he can ride off into the sunset as a Super Bowl champion. That just does not seem, because the alternative to that is you leave as the enemy. You leave as the guy that posted Russell Wilson off to New Orleans, where he maybe goes on and wins a Super Bowl. You oversee a struggling football team like the one we've seen the last 3 weeks, and everybody just wants you out, and you're playing in front of a half empty Lumen Field, and everyone's going, fire Carroll, and you go from being a hero to a villain. I don't think Pete wants any part of that, and I think he's a very savvy individual, Pete Carroll, and I think he knows full well that if he bows out at the end of this year, people will go, look, Pete, it wasn't how any of us wanted this to end, but thanks for everything, and I'll be first in line to say that. If he retires and bows out gracefully, Robbie, I'll be the first. I'll have an article written so fast to thank Pete Carroll for everything he has done. Nobody will beat me in terms of speed writing that day. I will stop what I'm doing and write that immediately. But I think that's what he's going to do. I think he's going to say, I'm not going to drive Wilson out. And even if Wilson then wants to request a trade, at least it will not be with me standing in the way. It will not be because of me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to real quick here. Thanks, Big Mike, for the donation. Ninja Dragon said, how many millions were you walking away from? I don't think it matters to Pete. I don't think at this point, at this age, it doesn't matter to Pete. He's not a player where he's like maximizing his dollars. He's already made his money. I don't think it has anything.
Yeah,
and if he
I can imagine that.
I think his money is guaranteed anyways, right? I mean, coaches' salaries aren't they're not like player salaries. So his is probably guaranteed anyways, even if he walks away. Right.
Two things here. One, Pete Carroll is a multi-millionaire. There is no way he's going to go, well, you know what, I could retire and bow out gracefully and not be the one who drives Russell Wilson out of town, but I need those extra millions. That's not going to, no, that's not the way Pete is going to approach this at all. When he has got more money for his great grandkids to be settled for the rest of their lives, he's not going to do that. Second thing is, I suspect there will be as is often the case with these things, Robbie, I don't think all of his salary will be guaranteed, but there'll be a
buyout.
There'll be some kind. It's not even a buyout. It's just do you know what, Pete? You have been an absolute superstar for this franchise. So you've decided to bow out. Here's, I don't know, X amount, whatever these. As someone who's not been in charge of millions and millions of dollar contracts before, I don't know what they would say. But you get my point. Like they would give him. You would give him a golden handshake of times and say, oh, look, thanks for everything, Pete. Here you go. I'm sure for billionaires, that is hardly it's not exactly a stretch, is it? It's kind of like me offering to buy you a beer. It's kind of that. It's kind of how it is, isn't it? So I don't think there's going to be any the money side of thing. Come on, let's just stop being silly here. I'm just ready for this. This is the problem though with this thing, Robbie, is that last year we would do a post game podcast and we would jump on, we would dissect the game.
We talk about the game,
do all these things. But there's only one conversation to have, isn't there?
Yeah, this is it.
It's the future.
This is what we're going to be talking about every single week. This is what I was saying earlier. Yeah.
I mean, when I listen to the radio now and I hear them talking about, oh, what's the key to this game? Or, like this week it'll all be full of people discussing Russell's finger and whether Geno Smith should play against the Cardinals. And there'll be maybe a section dedicated to, is Jamal Adams ready to have a breakout second half of the season? And there'll be a question about, is DK Metcalf going off the boil again because he had a bit of a fight at the end of the Packers game? And should Carlos Dunlap be kicked off the team for throwing a shoe? There'll be all that kind of stuff. And it's all irrelevant, isn't it? It's all like the only topic in town is the future of Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll, and to some extent John Schneider. And I'm pretty sure it's heading one way. And I'm part anxious to see what is next, Robbie. Part excited to see what is next. And
I think the reason why I'm excited is I just want to see something different. It's just not working for me anymore. We're 3-6. I want to see whether it be 6-3. So.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing is that when you watch good teams playing, you think, "Oh God, I remember those days."
Yeah,
when it's like watching the Cowboys. Do you know that the Cowboys were like 35 points to 3 up, I think, or 36 points to 3 up at halftime today, and they were already like 28-3 up, and then right at the end of the half, they blocked a punt and recovered it for a touchdown, and the whole stadium in Dallas was rocking. Like it was just everyone was going nuts, and the players were celebrating. And they've got like young stars on defense, and they've got big names on offense, and they can beat you through the air, and they can smash it up the gut with 2 great running backs. And you just look at Dallas and you think, oh, they're so exciting and fun and vibrant, and look what they were last year and look what they are this year. And they're probably going to win the number 1 seed, Robbie, in the NFC, I think, because their division is weak. I don't think the Rams have got the consistency, to top Dallas's record. And I can't, likewise with the Packers based on what we've seen today. So, and the Bucs lost today. So I think that Dallas probably are going to go and win the number 1 seed. I wouldn't have any confidence in Dallas actually doing anything with that number 1 seed, Robbie. I think they could easily be one and done in the playoffs, and we'll see. But there's like a real excitement there, isn't there? And I remember what it was like watching a team like that. And yeah, they'll have a clunker. They had a clunker against Denver, didn't they? They were absolutely blown out by the Broncos of all teams. But they've got a bit of spunk to them. There's just something there, and it goes to show that you can go from being pretty bad and awful to watch one year, and then you can reverse around. I mean, look, would you be willing to take a chance? And I've kind of thought about this on someone like Kellen Moore as your head coach. Would it be too much for him to come in? Because it's one thing, isn't it, to have an offensive-minded head coach who just goes to Kellen Moore, you work on the game plan and you scheme things up and you do all that, and then you get to be all creative with Dak Prescott and Zeke Elliott and Pollard and all those, and CeeDee Lamb and people like that, Bobby. And you get to cook up all these games. Like, if Kellen Moore comes over to Seattle, one, he's never been a head coach before, and he's a very young coach. He's barely been an offensive coordinator very long. But then you've also got to manage the team. You've got to manage everybody. You've got to oversee the defense and the offense and the special teams. You've got to be leading the meetings with the coaches, not just a part of that. You don't just get to lock yourself in a room and do it. It's like we were talking about Doug Peterson. Having like Doug Peterson with Kellen Moore would be great, but that's not going to, you're not going to be able to get him to take a sideways step and leave Dallas to come and play up here. But would you be willing to have someone like Kellen Moore and roll the dice on that working out?
Here's why I would say yes. Why I would say yes, because I think of it as the Sean McVay factor, right? What did Sean McVay do? He came in and he still handled the offensive side of the ball, but he went to, I can't remember who's the defensive coordinator that the Rams had.
Wade Phillips.
Wade Phillips, head coach, previous head coach experience, defensive coordinator, went out and said, "You run the defense. I'm not going to do that." And he managed the offense. And he was a young, up and coming coach, great game plan. Now he's got a whole system in place. Like, yes, I would take the chance as long as, Kellen Moore probably goes and gets that defensive guy that comes in and manages the defense. Not like, oh, I'm going to try to do the whole thing. He's going to like, hey, the defense is yours. That's not my thing. But I'm the head coach. But like that's kind of what Sean McVay did, right? Like that's why I say yes to that. I think it would be exciting. I think our offense would be exciting.
I think definitely Wade Phillips helped. But here's the thing about Sean McVay is that I think what we've come to learn about Sean McVay is that he's a very unique individual in that he's super intelligent, like a ridiculous memory and stuff like this, that he's a bit special. And with Sean McVay, he's been around coaching like his whole life, hasn't he? Like wasn't his dad a coach? Like there's footage of McVay working for John Gruden when I think he was in Tampa Bay, I think. And McVay looks like he's about 15. And like he's there and he's been around football he's just been like on a trajectory to be a head coach from like the day that he could, wear adult trousers. Like he's just been on that path. And he wasn't a player, was he? And he wasn't doing all those things. He was just on a trajectory to coach. And a part of me thinks, do you know what? It's great that Wade Phillips helped him out and all of that, but to a certain extent, wasn't he always destined to be that great head coach? And Wade Phillips maybe helped him along, but then they moved Wade Phillips on and got Staley in, who was then gone on to be a head coach himself. And has Kellen Moore got that natural coaching ability? Is he a leader of men like McVay is? Or is he just a great offensive schemer? That's the big question.
I mean, that would be right. That's the big question. I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, he's an interesting prospect. I would be excited about him coming in as head coach, seeing him play at Boise State and, those kind of things. I think it's just, he's at Northwestwood natives. I'd say it'd be cool to see something like that happen. I'd be interested. If
it happened, it would be excitable. I mean,
I'd be excited.
Even if it was a total colossal failure, at least you would be like, okay, well, I'm invested again. I'm interested to see how this plays out. And with Russell Wilson, you'd think, well, it's kind of interesting to see if Kellen Moore is the real deal. But we'll see. I mean, I still like the idea of if you could get Doug Peterson with like some younger offensive coach, gets promoted from somewhere, very creative, who's investing in a lot of these new creative, aggressive offensive schemes, and if you could get a really good defensive coordinator in who can sort it out, but the defense has played well again today, then that would be the same thing. Look, people are complaining, Robbie, about this, so we'll end with this because Josh has said, would we have gotten more points with Geno Smith, or would they have gotten more points with Geno Smith? That's the question, right? I think they'd have got the same points with Geno Smith. If anybody who thinks that Geno Smith, did people see Geno Smith against? How many points did they get against the New Orleans Saints, Robbie? I kind of forgot because it was like 5 o'clock in the morning when you were there. How do you not know how many points they got against the Saints? You were there.
I had a lot of alcohol beverages in that game. I can't remember.
Jesus, man, you were the.
I don't know. It was like we scored. We scored right out the gate, right? We came down and scored a touchdown.
They had that one play, didn't they?
Yeah.
Okay, so they scored 10 points.
Yeah.
So they scored 10 points against. That was the blown. DK Metcalf. I mean, what was it? So much of blown coverage, or was it just a busted play by the Saints? Mm. And then the defense forced a fumble. The Seahawks didn't do anything with it, and they kicked a field goal. That's what Seattle had in the way of points in that game. Okay, so let's not pretend like if Geno was playing today, like there was a couple of plays, wasn't there, where Russell kind of scrambled away from pressure and then probably like threw it 10 yards over Tyler Lockett's head or something. But But you get my point. Like Geno wouldn't even have scrambled away from that. Like I just don't see. There was no evidence in the last 3 games that, like, yes, if Geno Smith was playing today, they'd have scored. Could they have scored 3? Maybe. I don't know. I just don't think it would have been any different today. If they'd have got like 3 or 6 points, Robbie, and lost 17-6, would it have really mattered? Would we be sat here going, And if Geno Smith had played today, and here's the thing, like people are going, we're going to do. You should have played Geno Smith. Anybody who thinks you should have played Geno Smith today, let's just come up with this scenario, right, Robbie? Russell Wilson says he's fine to play. Russell Wilson's doctor says he's cleared to play. But you go, no, we're going to play Geno Smith. And then you lose, and it's a similar game to this. What happens then? You have the whole world going, what the hell were you doing playing Geno Smith?
Yeah, why didn't you play Russ? Yeah.
Why didn't you play Russell Wilson? He said his finger was fine. Yeah. His doctor says that he's ready to play. Come on. Like it comes back to what we were saying at the start. Anybody saying that Geno Smith needs to give their head a shake, because it was never going to happen for that reason as well. Apart from the fact that Wilson was always going to play if he was told he could. Pete Carroll was always going to play Wilson. If you play Geno Smith, you have to win this game to justify that decision. And who among us would have had any confidence of Geno Smith winning this game? So it couldn't happen.
Yeah. He didn't win any prior. So, yeah.
You know, and they hit a big 0. And they're now 3-6. And the season is on the brink of being officially over. I think a loss against Arizona, and we can. There's no way that they're going to win out from that point, or just lose one more game. So I think we're looking at it. Just bring on January. Bring on January. Let's see what's next. What I won't accept, though, Robbie, and this is just the final point to finish. I mean, I'll give you a chance to some closing thoughts as well. What I will not accept is the season finishing and Pete Carroll popping up for an end of season press conference and going, we never quite got it going, and you know we should have given this guy a few more snaps. You know, we wanted to, we just couldn't get them the snaps. We just couldn't get that guy those snaps, and we feel like this is 2012. We feel like this is 2012 now, where we just need to come back next year, have a championship off season, go and get it in free agency in the draft, and we'll be right back next year, and we've just got to go and improve this, and yada 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 yada. No, it's not. I can't be doing with that. I can't be doing with that, Robbie. So and if that happens, I don't know what I'm going to say on one of these.
Yeah, and I just don't want to hear like, wow, we could never quite figure out how to use this guy. Like the same thing they said about Jamal Adams. We haven't figured out how to use him quite yet, and like those kind of things. Like I don't want to hear that either. It's time for a change, and this is it's going to be one of those things that we're just going to keep talking about, and hopefully we'll get some more clarification on things, and hopefully we'll have some, maybe some more exciting things to talk about going forward on some of these games, and like, man, hey, how well did Trey Bound play, and those kind of things. But so right now, this is going to dominate the our conversation. So, I look forward to the offseason.
I don't think it's going to happen, but I hope if they lose against Arizona, I hope Pete Carroll just comes out and says, "I'm retiring at the end of the year." And then we can sort of just go, okay, well, that's it. Give the franchise weeks to plan and prepare for what's next. We can all say goodbye to Pete Carroll. We can just embrace the last few games of the season and second half of the season going, yeah, do you know what? It's not the way we wanted to end it, but we can all celebrate Pete, and we can reminisce about the great times and all of that. And we can put him in the Ring of Honor at the end of the season or something, or reveal a statue or whatever this stuff. And we can do all that. That to me is more satisfactory than the constant what is going to be Pete bashing between now and the end of the season, which will be justified, and the sort of the wondering and anxiety that Seahawks fans will have about what's going to happen next with the quarterback. Plus, it will also give you several weeks to know what Russell Wilson's really thinking, because if Carroll going isn't the only thing that's going to dictate what Wilson decides to do with his future, his career, then the Seahawks need to know. Because if they're planning for a future without Russell Wilson, then maybe they get one type of coach. If they're planning for a future with Russell Wilson, then maybe go for a different type of coach. So they need to be able to do that as well. Mike, thank you for the final super chat. Appreciate that, Mike. A big supporter of the channel. Yeah. Much appreciated. Thanks to all of the people for the super chats. Robbie, thanks for your time as well.
Of course.
Ah, man, do you know what? Why the hell could we not have done these things in 2013? It would have been so much fun.
Yeah, it would have been great.
Imagine doing them when they were winning and playing well. All those dramatic wins. Yeah, the Marshawn Lynch year when we could go on and talk about this, and that would have been real fun. Instead,
here we are.
Left with this. I might have to do some kind of a stream soon on more of the draft stuff, because I think people are going to they're going to want a bit of detail on that. So I have to do something on that soon. But it is not a good quarterback class, as I mentioned. No. And as soon as I've got the energy to write it all down, I will do it. I tried to do it over the weekend and just thought, I can't be bothered to write all of this stuff. So maybe another time. Until then, like and share the video, subscribe to the channel, spread the word, share this video around on Twitter and Facebook and all of that. It will help. And we'll see you next time. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, guys. See you later.
See ya.